Okay. Okay.
Greetings, ghouls and boils. I'm the Ghoul Master, a loving homage to horror anthology narrators of yesteryear. Wait, I'm an homage? Why didn't anybody tell me? You'll hear from my agent about this. But first, let's get to the heart of the matter. I'm here to tell you about the new horror anthology, Memoirs of the Morbid, on Kickstarter in time for Halloween. Memoirs of the Morbid is a black and white homage to classic horror comics from the 40s and 50s, containing 5 self-contained stories by some of the best indie comic creators out there. There's that word again. Better not find out homage is an insult. Anyways, Memoirs of the Morbid is completely done and ready to go to the printer. So don't make a grave mistake by missing it.
Hello, everybody. This is Grant Lankard and my wife, Angie. We have a big event. Normally, we only have one guest, but tonight we have, 6. Do you want to go around the horn and I'll introduce yourselves? Maybe we'll start with Angie.
Hi, I'm Angie, and I'm the writer of Clean Up in Aisle 4. Yeah, I can talk. And it was very much inspired by my last job. And I've been writing like my whole life, but this is the first time I'm letting one roam out in the world.
All right, Phil.
Hey everyone, I'm Phillip Butehorn. I'm a horror comic writer. I've been writing since 2019. In this anthology, I am the writer of 3 Strikes and You're Dead, art by Alberto Presso. Pete?
Cool. Pete Collins. I am the artist on Come and See, which is written by Matt.
You want to go to Matt?
Yeah, hi, I'm Matthew Summo, writer since about 2009. I wrote Come and See for Memoirs of the Morbid.
And I'm James Ferguson. I'm also a writer in this anthology that I wrote My Demon is a Centerfold.
And I'm Brian K. Morris, and I didn't do nothing in this issue, except I did provide some editorial guidance. But I was in the inaugural issue of Memoirs of the Morbid, and I'm pleased to be here with y'all.
Great. I think Brian is being modest. He didn't do nothing. He was my consulting editor, which, I think you gave me some good advice. I don't know if I used all of it, but I used a lot of it, right?
I'm used to being ignored, so that's fine.
Oh, really? So I think Phil is actually the guy who introduced me to most of the guys who worked on the comic book. I mean, other than Angie, of course. Well, other than Angie and Brian.
That would be a pretty great story then, if that was
Yeah. So Phil, how did you meet the other guys that were working on this? And they must have made a good impact on you, because you suggested that I talk to them about working on this anthology as well.
So Matt and James, I don't know what year it was that we kind of formed a little group. So there's 4 of us. It's Mario, Matt, James, and myself. We formed a little group where we just kind of talked about stories and pitched stories to each other. And to be honest, the only way for in comics to climb up that ladder is to bring people up with you. So
Right.
Whenever I have a opportunity to bring in other creators, invite them to anthologies, I always recommend Mario, Matt, and James. As we know, Matt and Peter work on everything together. So he joined us as well on this fun trip.
Cool. Yeah, so thinking back on it, it was kind of crazy that I trusted you so much, because honestly, the only thing I knew about Matt and James was, or Pete, was that you recommended them. So, you guys should give Phil a high five or something for recommending you guys.
Oh, we've
Uh,
given him plenty. Yeah, that's
Yeah, yeah. We give him his flowers all the time. I mean,
All the
Phil
time.
is truly like a huge asset for comics in general. I mean, like if you follow his social media, like he promotes like any like campaign that even if he's not involved in it, if it's somebody that he knows is involved in it or something that he's like passionate about, he's like screaming, from the rooftops about it. I mean, I've seen him, do work for other creators that they should be paying him for. Honestly,
Yeah.
he really helped us out when we were kickstarting Bardic Verses. I mean, when James is kickstarting Real Slobberknocker, like he just shouts the stuff that he cares about from the rooftops, and it's really it's truly an asset. So like, we thank him all the time for the work that he does for us.
So that's actually a really great segue, because another guy who's very much like that, I think I'll introduce people who are in the chat right now. Another guy who's very much a champion and a cheerleader is Carl Witzman and his wife, Donna. They're both great people, really nice couple. And also Daniel Calvin. I don't think I know you, but nice meeting you.
Daniel's another good dude. He's got a Kickstarter coming up too called Knight and Rook. That's definitely worth checking out too.
Cool. So actually, before we get too far along into the stream, what do you guys say we actually launch the Kickstarter?
Let's go.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Alright.
Okay, I'm going to share.
Who's going to be first? I'm going to get my phone up as fast as I can.
Oh, damn it.
Let's see. Sorry, I'm really, really, really bad about using StreamYard, so it's going to take me a second to figure out how to share the screen. Is it?
There you go.
It's coming up? Okay, cool. So all we really have to do is press I'm ready to launch. And then do whatever this nonsense is.
Grant, we were close to your. I know your goal is 100 followers. We got to 84.
We got pretty close. I'm happy.
That's excellent.
I'm happy with 84. I think I don't know. In the past, I've been a little bit more aggressive about getting pre-followers.
Yay!
There it is.
17 days to go. That is not what I
Whoop.
put in there.
Uh-oh.
That's a tight turnaround.
Okay.
Well, now that just means everybody better.
There you go. Back it quick, folks. Let's
Right.
go.
Collector's item classic. Come on, boys.
Exactly.
Get those Mylar bags ready.
Oh, well, we already got 2 backers. Exciting.
It is.
All right, so back to what we were saying. So, well, yeah, I'm going to stop school. So, yeah, so Brian actually worked on the first volume of Memoirs of the Morbid.
Yes.
I don't know if any of you guys have read the first volume, but it was, Daniel's number 3. Cool. Oh, yeah, drop the link. Sorry. I told you guys I'm bad at this.
All right, we're good. We're making it through.
So,
No
Brian,
smoke, no flame, no problem.
as far as working on the first volume or the second volume, do you like writing better, or do you like editing?
I prefer to write myself. I find editing, though, very useful. I'm also a freelance editor for a couple of paperback houses, and I'm usually their teaching editor, in that somebody who's never done it before winds up on my lap. Fortunately, this group was a lot easier to deal with than most of those, because the stories that came in across the transom were really great on this one. And I was happy to be in the first one. I was very happy with my story and all the other stories in the first volume, and looking forward to this one. But as a whole, I prefer to create the story and let somebody else tear my soul to shreds than me have it to do to someone else. So.
Yeah, I mean, that was interesting because so I got to edit Brian on the first volume, and I feel like I learned a lot from editing you.
Yeah, it can go both ways as far as when you get a good editor, and you did a great job because there were times when I was frankly a pain in the butt to work with because of my enormous ego. But Grant was asking all the right questions, and some things I did push back on because I had a specific goal in mind in the way I told my story. But he had a lot of great questions and a lot of great insights to it. So I think it was a good collaboration overall. I was very pleased with the final result when it saw print. So that to me is the most important thing, because I always tell people, think of the end user, just like in electronics. Think of your reader, or more immediately, think of your editor, because that's the person you've got to please first. Because otherwise, you're not going to see print otherwise. But yeah, I was very happy with our collaboration.
Well, so our friend Marvin is in. Marvin is another Pittsburgh guy. He's another Pittsburgh guy, and he is somebody who comes along to conventions with us occasionally. And he has a really cool indie comic book called The Edge, which you guys should check out. Yeah, so anyways, I hope that the way I approached working with you, Brian, was kind of more like a guiding force than, telling you what to do or anything like that. I mean, at this point now, I guess I've edited 2 anthologies, and I would never take the tactic of you have to do this or you have to do that. I try to talk things through with people.
Yeah, and a good editor will not make it sound like they wrote it. A good editor, to me, will always preserve the voice of the author. Right. And there are some times when you may have to say, yes, here's a line in the sand. You do have to do this certain thing. And it may be you have the wrong tone, you have the wrong violence level, the language may be a little rough, or maybe even not rough enough for your intended audience. And it's up to the editor to make sure that the creator stays within the framework, the identity of the magazine. But yeah, the fact that you and I are still talking, I think that speaks volumes right there. So, and I just spread the word that I'm hard to deal with, because it keeps a lot of people from bothering me. So, because they hear what an ogre I am.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I like I said, I actually learned a lot from editing you, just because, like you said, you pushed back on a couple things. And that kind of caused me to think like, okay, well, like for instance, my philosophy has always been, when writing something, to say what you have to say in as few words as possible.
Right.
And there were some times where I was trying to get you to compress the story, and you pushed back on it, and I was like, oh, well, maybe compressing isn't always the right answer.
Yeah. It takes up room that the artist won't have to draw in, so I'm always there for my artist.
Right. So what about the rest of you guys? Do you guys normally work with editors, and what do you guys look for? I don't know. I guess this question is up for any of you.
So when I work with the editor, I want an editor to be critical, but also tell me what's good, so I know, what my strengths are, what my weaknesses are, so I can focus on my weaknesses. That's what I want from an editor.
Okay. I mean, hopefully I did that. Maybe that's something I need to work on.
No, the first thing you point out was too wordy. And with this story, I was so excited about writing it, I made it 100% too wordy. So that helped a lot.
So we actually have somebody else in the chat who worked on the first
Ian.
Ian wrote a really great story in volume 1 of Memoirs of Morbid, which is called Coaxial. which was really, really great. And I've also been following his Tomb comic books. So yeah, so Ian's like you guys all know Ian as well?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's a great dude. Hell of a
Ian's
writer.
awesome.
The Tomb series is amazing.
Yeah.
This is interesting for me because I've been, I wouldn't say an outsider, but like not involved in the writing process, and editing. And, yeah.
She's been watching me work a lot on the comic books, and now she's finally getting a story in, which honestly, for a first story, I think her story turned out great. Yeah, so
hopefully it's not like beginner's clicker.
Right.
I don't know, but yeah, him having to edit, that was an interesting experience for a relationship.
I can imagine.
Did you yell at him at all for any of his edits?
No, I mean, like, I think especially when you're doing this for the very first time, you're very passionate, and like taking criticism is very tricky. Like, enough as it is, like, because it's all fresh and new, and like you think you kind of know what you're doing, but
no, you made a good point. Which so I guess I was a little bit more involved in your story because Angie has mostly written prose in the past. So I needed to sit down and say to her, okay, this is where panel 1 would start. This is where panel 2 would start. She didn't really have like experience like that. And the first run through of her story, she was not happy with how I broke it down. And so hopefully not to give too much away. Her story is about a grocery store that caters to an interesting clientele, we'll say.
Yeah.
I'm an artist first and foremost. So my idea was to get like these weird creatures on the very first page. And Angie was like, "What are you doing? Like, why would you pace it like that?" And so I think that's maybe kind of where the disconnect from like being a writer versus an artist comes into, where like somebody who's an artist is thinking more about like, oh, let's see what all the fun stuff that I can draw is, which is I think why maybe it's a better idea to break up those two jobs, like artist versus writer. But I don't know, sometimes it works the other way around too, though.
Yeah, for sure. So one of the things that I do when I get a script is I actually look for the parts that I'm least interested in drawing. And that's where I put my focus first, because I know it's going to take extra time. Now, granted, I'm pretty fortunate. I don't run into that scenario very often, at all, ever. Matt, you're welcome. But when it does, it becomes like that conversation piece back. Like, hey, you said 15 panels in a page. Can we scale that back? Or whatever. And I always look to that thing that I know I'm going to struggle with, that I know is going to take me longer.
So you guys have a true collaboration.
Yeah, for sure. And he sticks to his guns, for sure. And sometimes I'll, we have like a veto power kind of thing, like an unspoken rule, right? Like, no, I will not draw that horse riding the motorcycle, Yeah. But
would have made a great scene though, Pete. Come on.
It would. Hey man, the cover for Bardic Versus 2 is going to be amazing.
Horse on a motorcycle. Cool.
Pete, I gotta say, when I read Bardic Versus, the first one, right, I really had no idea how your art changes. Like, I literally when I think it went from like, I don't know if it went from like Frank Miller to Rob Liefeld, but at first I literally had to go back. So I was like, what is going on? I was oblivious to that. And it was the best surprise ever.
Thanks, man. The best thing for me in doing that was breaking my own comfort and, trying to do something I wouldn't normally do. I can honestly say most people probably don't go out of their way to draw like Rob Liefeld.
It was,
and I picked up a lot of stuff from that. What to do, what not to do. So it was a fun challenge.
Yeah.
It really was.
Yeah. So Pete, so you alluded earlier that you and Matt have worked a lot together. So how did this kind of arrangement come along?
It's a love story for the ages. Matt, you want to take it?
Yeah, we have the same day job. So when we're not working on comics, we work at the same employer. Basically, Pete had been there for a little while. I was new to the job. I would see drawings that Pete gave to coworkers, and I'm like, who is this guy? Who's this guy drawing Batman and giving it to people? Like, I need to talk to him to see if he's like into comics, trying to make new friends. We got to talking at a Christmas party, and I was like, hey man, like, would you ever want to draw a comic? Like, I'm a comic book writer. And, one thing led to another, and we started making comics together.
It was basically the plot for Love Actually, but with comics.
I'm just picturing Matt now, like running across like the office, like, who drew this Batman? Was this your Batman? Whose Batman is this?
I did
it, but in my best Christian Bale like Batman voice. Who drew this?
Who drew this?
I opened up the door to an office one day, and he was just standing there with cards.
Yes.
Drawing it. It was great. It was amazing.
That's awesome.
That's what I pictured. Him just like having holding the paper up.
Yeah, a lot of poster paper from the dollar store. That's for sure.
Yeah, I've had jobs like that too, where like you kind of start to learn like people you work with who have similar interests to you, and it's kind of like interesting because you might not necessarily bring up like, oh yeah, I love comic books, but then it kind of leaks out slowly but surely like that.
Yeah, for sure. We got lucky. It's not just Matt and myself. From this one particular employer, right? Like there was Nick Vittoria, who did the grayscale support for my line art incumbency. He worked there as well for a few years. And Matt and I are also currently wrapping up an entry for a completely different anthology, Unknown Heroes, which funded a couple weeks back, I think. And that features another coworker of ours that's doing some ink. We're kind of doing a weird thing where I'm drawing it digitally, he's inking it traditionally, and then it's coming back over for coloring. So
what's the recruitment process like for your day job here? It sounds like it's like you must like comics, like
Yeah.
So you got an inker, you need to hire a letterer, and then like an editor maybe, and then you got a whole little publisher.
I'm not doing anything during the day,
We're like 3 positions away from having a full studio at this point.
It's funny that it doesn't work the other way around. I was just thinking, like, Pete, Matt found all these pictures or drawings. Like Matt couldn't like leave scripts lying around and be like, oh yeah, I just wrote this script for you. Like it doesn't work the other way around. You'd be like, oh, who wrote this script? I gotta find the guy who wrote this.
You know what though? It kind of sort of did actually, because I had heard through the grapevine, Matt's had some work that's been published, and I was like, oh, that's really cool. I should connect to them. The day-to-day gets so hectic and busy. I never did that, so it was inevitable, I think, but yeah, you're probably right.
So James,
it's much harder.
Yeah,
James, I don't know if you maybe want to mention like what other projects you've been working on currently.
Yeah, I mean, most recently, I had wrapped up a Kickstarter called A Real Slobberknocker. It's a wrestling comic book. It's the first issue of a 3-issue miniseries with Dan Buxa, and Pete actually drew a variant cover for that book. So it's all very incestuous here, as you can see. So I just wrapped that up, and now Dan's finishing up the artwork for that, which has been really cool. So just seeing all the rest of those pencils come in for the first issue, and exciting to get that really off the ground and out into people's hands.
Yeah, that sounds really great. Have you started on fulfilling yet?
Not yet. No, Dan's still finishing up the artwork for it. So he should have all the pencils finished in the next week for the remaining pages. And then he'll go through and ink it, and he's coloring it as well. and then we got Matt Krotzer on board to letter the book, and he's ready to go whenever the finished pages come in. So we're anticipating probably by the end by October-ish to have the book out fulfilled in people's hands.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shout out to Matt Krotzer. That guy's a wizard.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to check out your comic book. I haven't read it yet, honestly.
Yeah. Well, like again, it's not done yet, so we'll I'll share it with you when we got it ready.
It's funny because I backed that, so it'll be at our house
did you?
eventually.
So there you go. Thank you.
Nice. I didn't even know. I guess I'm gonna get it.
Yeah.
Cool. So it looks like we're doing well. In about 15 minutes, we're up over 200 already.
Nice.
And according to Donna, we're actually at 246. It's pretty awesome, right?
Cool.
I mean, if we can keep up at that pace, we should be doing all right, right?
Yeah.
Let's get $1,000 by the end of the night.
$1,000 by the end of the night would be maybe not completely unattainable, but pretty awesome, right?
Let's
My
just swing
goal-
for the fences and get the full funding tonight. I mean,
My-
come on. Have
My
some faith.
goal.
What is the expression? Shoot for the moon and land in the stars.
Right.
Right. Swing for the fences.
I really want Stephen King to either or retweet one of my tweets to him about one of the Kickstarters I'm in. It's gonna happen one day. I'm determined.
Does he do that? I mean,
I think he responds to some people, but
He's
I always
gotta start.
tweet at him hey, check out this new horror book, the next generation of horror writers. My
There you
goal
go.
is just to get his attention once, and I'll be happy. So I'll continue to tweet at him about this book.
so apparently CPIP, is that how you pronounce that? CPIP, I'm assuming, is the lucky 13th backer.
Nice.
Exciting.
Phil, we could look at what books might be close to what books of Stephen King's might be close to that. I had success with
Good
Sean
idea.
Phillips had retweeted something I shared about One True Love with our buddy Mario's Kickstarter. He's running right now called One True Love. It's like a crime book, and I'm like, this is like if you read anything by Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips, this is it. And I had tagged Phillips in it, and he retweeted it in like a minute.
That's great.
So maybe we find which one of the stories line up with maybe a Stephen King book, and you're like, hey, if you like this book, that would probably be the way to go.
I mean,
Yes.
Stephen King, wasn't he in either Creepshow or Tales from the Crypt or?
He was in the second Creep Show.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
He demonstrated his very poor acting ability in a very offensive role, I would argue. Matt. Okay, Matt's back.
And isn't it, his son's in that too, right? He plays his son in the movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Probably.
You might be right. I didn't know that, but Creep Show 2 is very hit or miss, and his segment is I would put in the miss category.
Maybe don't tweet that though.
Yeah, don't.
Oh, yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
gonna like Grant said you're a terrible actor. Put back
I
our
don't care.
Kickstarter.
I don't care what Grant says about you. I think you're great. So could you back this Kickstarter campaign?
Oh
That's
my
funny.
goodness.
So, do you guys want to go through the campaign a little
Yeah.
bit?
Yeah, let's do it.
Grant, can I share a fun fact about my story?
Sure.
Yes.
It's probably going to take me an hour to figure out how to share the screen, so you might as well.
So when you came to me about Volume 1. What year was that? I don't remember what year that was. Was
It
that
would be 2 years ago.
wow? Okay. So I came to you about this story. I think it was different. I think it was called Leon versus the Haunted House.
Right.
And it got rejected the first time because you had a story about a haunted office building.
Right, which I actually didn't end up using for the first volume, which I feel really bad about.
Oh, don't even worry about it. Because I got to, reunite with Matt, Pete, and James for this book, which is
Right.
phenomenal. But that was. It. Sometimes I'm kind of glad rejection happens because something better happens down the road.
So
And
the
this
hunt.
group is a perfect opportunity for that to happen with.
Yeah, it was very strange. So Phil Phil's story was about a retirement home that kind of is like sucking the life out of its patients. And I had a story that I was going to use for volume 1 that was about an office building that was sucking the life out of its employees. And I think I'm going to actually end up using that probably for volume 3. So, yeah, I feel bad in retrospect for telling you that you couldn't be in volume 1 because your story was too similar to mine, and then I didn't. And then I ended up using a different story, but like you said, it worked. I think it worked out for the best, right?
Yeah, and I'm glad my story was cursed because I pitched it in 2020 and it got rejected because of everything that was happening in New York State with COVID and the retirement homes. So they're like, yeah, we can't take that story right now. So I'm glad it got rejected a second time.
Oh wow, interesting. Okay, so let's go through. Let's go through the Kickstarter a little bit. And as Carl just brought up, yes, we are up to 260 now. So I think that's pretty good. If we can stay on this pace for at least the next couple hours, that should be good. So we have some of the art for the comic book. My story is called "It's the Truly Repugnant Pumpkin," Charlie. Last name redacted. And obviously, this is a kind of an homage to a classic animated Halloween special, which will remain nameless. But if you can see how the main character is dressed, you can maybe kind of figure out this. So I wrote and drew this story. This was kind of my baby. And it's kind of about, what causes a place to become haunted, so to speak. And so the idea for this story actually came from somebody sent me a piece of fan art and asked me if I could figure out a way to get it into the comic book. And I said, I think it's a really great piece of fan art, but it doesn't apply to any of the stories that are in the comic book. So I don't know what I would do with it. And he said, well, couldn't you write a story around this piece of fan art? And that's exactly what I did. And now that piece of fan art is actually the cover, is one of 5 covers for Memoirs of the Morbid. And we'll go over that when we get later in the Kickstarter to the covers section. So the next story is called 3 Strikes and You're Dead. Phil, I don't know if you want to explain well, you kind of already did, but if you want to maybe elaborate some.
So it's about this young man who was on top of the world. He was going to be the next Pete Alonso of the Mets, but instead of doing the right thing, he picked up a few drinks and decided to drive and hit somebody, and that ruined his life. And the only job he was able to get was at this retirement home that sucks the life out of its residents. Right. And in the beginning, he enjoyed, hanging out with ghosts. He describes it as it's like having a pet. But then he realized that it was doing more harm than good. So he decided to fight back.
And here's some of the art from the story.
Yeah, I love Alberto's because these are not the normal looking ghosts you see in other stories. This is, I would compare it a little Lovecraftian with the ghost image. I really love it.
So Alberto is great. I love him. I think he's a really talented artist. He put like a really strange atmosphere to this story. I have terrible news for you. I emailed him recently, and he's retired from comic book making.
Yeah. So he and I were talking about doing another story because he loved doing this. Yeah. And then he had some health issues and decided to retire.
Oh, I didn't know about the health issues.
Yeah. We were talking about doing more stories together. But yeah, he actually just he retired.
Yeah, like you said, I was really happy with how the art turned out, and I definitely would have hired him for other projects.
Yeah.
And he's a really nice guy too, and very enthusiastic. He seemed really excited to work on this story. So, yeah, I was saddened by the fact that he decided to retire. But what can you do, right?
The one thing he nailed, there's a scene that I had to do from The Burbs, where Tom Hanks comes walking out of his neighbor's house that kind of blew up, and I was like, "Hey, there's this scene, there's this panel, make it match," and he really nailed it.
Okay, so let's move on to the next story. My demon is a centerfold. James, do you kind of want to?
Yeah, so this was set in a bygone era where kids find porn in the woods, and we follow a few kids who have found porn in the woods. It's one of those like weird phenomenons that a lot of kids of our generation have experienced, and there's a bit of a twist to it in that there's a bully following them to steal their treasure here, but slight spoilers, there's a demon involved. So we pitched it as really like a supernatural version of Weird Science, or Stranger Things meets Weird Science here. But it was a fun story to write, and Tony really knocked it out of the park with the artwork. There's one page on this that like the layout just completely blew me away. Like it's such like an inventive layout to kind of tell this this one particular climax really of the story, and completely unexpected from what I had envisioned when I first wrote out the script, but just like when you see it, it's gonna be like, wow, that's just such a cool looking shot that he put together. So really cool stuff.
Yeah, he got really creative with some of the page layouts, right?
Yeah, it was just great to see like that some of that stuff come together, and like just the shots, the characters are all unique. Like it's three like weirdo kids, and yeah, they all, you look at them and you're like, they're all distinguished, so like you could tell them apart really easily, even without any colors or anything on the page. You could say, all right, yeah, like it's these three different guys. You get a sense of their personalities right away when you start reading.
So just in case anybody thinks we're being prejudiced against the artist because Pete is the only one who's here, it's not that I have anything against artists. The reason why we don't have the artist on the live stream is that most of them are from foreign countries and don't speak English very well. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but just for the purposes of a live show, I thought it would be better to just have the writers on. Did that come across as offensive?
I don't know.
Okay. So if anybody's wondering why we don't have more of the artist on the show tonight, that's why. But yeah, Antonio Pisana is a great artist. I mean, you can see from looking at his panels. And I'm actually going to be working with him on one of my next projects. So yeah. And I mean, obviously, I liked this story almost from minute one, just because I remember finding porn in the woods as a kid, and it was like, I mean, there was part of it like you were kind of afraid to look at it, but you were also enticed, and yeah, like I think you got all the emotions right with this story.
I mean, I find it fascinating because I was not a teenage boy and only learned about this phenomenon like recently. And I was like, wait, what? And apparently, yes. Anyways,
it's just so weird. Yeah, it's something that like multiple people have experienced. So it wasn't like it was like just me or just anyone else. Like, it's one of those like, oh yeah, like I totally remember finding this stuff. And it's like, why? Why of all places in the woods? Like where, like, yeah. So that was where the inspiration.
You know why? Pre-internet.
Yeah, that's true. That's why I say bygone era. That's something like I don't know that kids today will understand that. So
no.
So we also have in the chat Matt Mossman. Matt also worked on volume 1 of Memoirs of the Morbid. Nice to see you, Matt. I'm not going to lie to you, Marvin. I don't remember what this is in reference to. So, I mean, it might be a clever joke. I don't know.
I don't know.
And Carl says, "Oh, I found porn half burned in a bonfire." See, that's what I'm wondering about the whole woods porn thing. Is it maybe people who, like, do whatever it is that they do with, people do with porn, and then they feel guilty, so they, throw it out into the woods or something?
When I first bought porn, I was probably in middle school, and I did feel guilty. I lived across the street. Matt, St. Killian's? And I felt so guilty so there's a church and the school. The dumpster was diagonally across my house, and looking back, it was a terrible idea, but I dumped it in the church's garbage because I felt so bad.
That's pretty amazing to be honest.
So Angie knows this story already. Since you shared an embarrassing story, I guess I'll share an embarrassing story. I think my brother was at Boy Scouts or at youth group or something. So, like a little snot-nosed kid, I went into his room and I was like rummaging through his stuff. And underneath his mattress, I found his porno magazine. So, yeah, like you said, I took it into my room and I did what people do with porn. And at this point, I was still pretty religious. I was raised in a house where we were taught like that sort of thing is, a direct ticket to hell. So after I was done, I ran up over the hill behind where our house is, and I threw it up into the woods. And it actually rained that night.
Oh no.
So the next morning, my brother comes into my room and he goes, "Grant, did you find something in my bedroom?" And I was like, yeah. And he goes, "Well, what did you do with it?" And I go, "Well, I threw it up into the woods." And my brother says this. I will never forget his words to this day. Oh, here comes our cat, Stitch. The words he said to me, "Well, what are we going to tell Mom when she goes to look for her porn magazine back?" You guys might not think that's funny because you guys don't know my mom. The reason why Angie is shocked is my mom is like the most straight-laced woman to ever walk the planet.
Wow. No, I have not heard that story. Oh my gosh, that's funny.
And now Angie's heard it in front of thousands of people. Cool.
Yep.
So speaking of Angie, we'll move on to the next story. Cleanup on aisle 4. Do you want to explain what cleanup on aisle 4 is, Angie?
Yeah, so like I said, it was very inspired by my last job working in a high-end grocery store. Let me reference that. And that's bad enough, but then the pandemic happened, and yeah, people turned kind of crazy. And so once I quit that job, I needed an outlet to like get rid of all the, and I came up with this story. And I guess I would call it a sort of cathartic experience. And what I imagined in my head, I came out like perfectly. I'm like Grant and I were talking about. It did take a little editing back and forth, but we figured it out. And then Grant was very gracious enough to help me find an artist to do it, and I'm very pleased with how it came out. And I really think if you've worked in retail, you're really going to enjoy it. It will be also a cathartic experience.
Yeah, so the name of the artist on this project was J.P. Villichez. And quite frankly, yeah, I wasn't sure what to expect. But yeah, it turned out amazing. I mean, you guys can see the art. There's lots of very intense darks and very intense lights. His layouts were super creative, just a really talented guy. I definitely want to work with him again in the future.
And we were very fortunate to find someone to do a variant cover for my story.
Yeah, but we'll get to that.
Okay. But again, I think a lot of people will like it.
Yeah. Yeah, if you've worked in the service industry, you'll like her story. So last but certainly not least is Come and See. We actually have two people who worked on this. So the big question that everybody has about the story, or at least I have for this story. Oh, here's a funny joke. Carlos's note to self: search church dumpster. Okay, so the big question I had for Come and See, which I don't think I asked you, but this was one thing that I was curious about. Was it at all inspired by the BTK killer?
Believe it or not, no.
Okay.
I really wanted to do something. How do I talk about this without like giving it away?
Yeah.
I wanted to really drop in the middle of like this serial killer's rampage, I guess you could say, and really kind of get into like the nitty gritty of what he's doing, and you know, follow this detective as he kind of is reaching the tail end of his investigation and him discovering who the serial killer is, and you know, whether or not he likes what he finds is one thing you'll have to read to find out. But I really wanted to kind of just drop us like right in the middle of what's going on, and then seeing kind of the tail end and all the treats that come with that.
Yeah, so I was happy with this story because this is the first story that we've had that kind of pushed the for mature reader that label, because I mean we've been putting that on the front cover of well, we did for issue 1 and 2, and I mean in retrospect we probably didn't need to put for mature readers on volume 1, but this kind of like pushed the envelope a little bit more.
Yeah.
I mean, not that I think. I mean, this certainly isn't like gruesome, but you definitely do show some kind of yucky stuff.
Yeah. Oh, it was going to be a lot worse. You know, it was right after Bardic Verses where we started working on this, so it became a, you know, I needed to get like the color and the you know the humor in the art kind of out, you know, kind of do like a artistic cleanse, if you will.
Yeah.
So I was looking for, you know, top level gore and grossness just to like counterbalance that, but I think where we settled on is a nice balance. So for sure.
I do recall, Grant, one of the notes you gave me was like, can you make this less gross?
Yeah.
Like, I guess.
Yeah, I think originally it was even a bit much. Like, I mean, I like blood and guts. I don't like it to the point where it's making you physically ill. Angie is very different than Angie hates blood and guts. Like,
I don't hate blood and guts. Like, I don't. I prefer like 80s horror, which is, you know, like horror comedy, and there's been some really good ones. I'm not a fan of torture porn, but that's what you felt. But it's funny because a lot of the stuff that I write is actually like not. I leave it to the imagination. Like, I've been working on a lot of horror stories that are very blood and guts. So I think it's just like everybody's taste fluctuates a little bit, you know.
Yeah, for sure. You know, I my horror tastes are a little bit more graphic, for sure. You know, although depends on the mood I'm in, right? Like a good, nice, suspenseful horror film.
Yeah.
Where, you know, light on blood, high on jump scares. I can go for that too. the thing that I find fascinating about certain horror films, and I, try to translate this through the art, is like, you might have that shocking scene where something happens, it's gory, it's, there's violence, whatever. But I try to convey visually, there's a more concerning element here, right? Which I think kind of pays off in the last couple of pages.
Yeah.
Without giving anything away, but it's, this was definitely a fun one. And again, Nick Vittorio did a bang up job, with grayscales. I did the line art for this. He came through with the grayscales. I put in a couple of fine-tuned details after that, because by the time the art process had kind of come to an end, there's some new tricks I picked up. So, it was kind of like a back and forth. But he did a bang up job on the, hitting the grayscales for sure.
So just, I'm sorry.
ahead.
Can I just go through the chat a little bit? Carl's
Sure.
bringing, we're up to 430 with 20 backers, which is awesome. That would be a really great start if we could get $500 by the end of this chat. Steven Petrovelli, is this another guy that you guys are friends with?
Yeah, I know Steve.
Okay, Steven.
Good dude, another creator.
Yeah, I don't know if I've met you before, but thanks a lot. This is a great compliment. And did I mention before that Matt Mossman was an artist on Volume 1?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Matt's a really talented artist, and he's a very nice guy. And he's actually going to be a guest on this very show later this month. And he's paying Pete a very good compliment. He said the art is creepy.
I appreciate that.
I think I cut somebody off. I can't remember. Did somebody else?
I just wanted to say, if you need to know where my headspace was for Come and See, I wrote this entire script on a 5-hour flight from New York to Arizona. So I was definitely getting some rage out on the page.
So Pete, we were talking a little bit before the show started about what was the inspiration for the character design of the main killer. You can kind of see it there on the screen right there.
I kind of pulled from a few different things. I wanted it to have kind of like a Slipknot meets Michael Myers kind of a vibe to it, right? I wanted the mask to stand out, but not be something that, was so unique that it didn't seem like it was real or realistic. The more elaborate that kind of thing gets, it becomes more of a vanity project, and I didn't really want that. And I wanted to convey just the brutality through the simplicity. Our killer, when you see him in the first couple of pages, is a big person. He's sizable. He's got some strength to him. You don't see him move very quickly, but you see him move with purpose. That sort of thing. Very Michael Myers-esque in that way. Yeah.
Man, it's so hard to talk about this without revealing like all of the surprises, because like my first instinct is to go on about like, oh yeah, it's really cool when this happens or when that happens, but we'll let the viewers, or I guess the readers, discover that for themselves. So the narrator for this comic book is called the Ghoul Master. He was my creation. He's kind of, as the trailer alluded to, he's kind of an homage to the Crypt Keeper. What sets him apart is he's really bad at coming up with puns, and he's kind of an entitled celebrity. So that's something that I should bring up as well. Like, I didn't even realize this until last night. A lot of the stories in Memoirs of the Morbid I would describe as being horror/comedy. And so, even if you're not like a huge horror fan, if you like comedy, you might enjoy the comic. All right, so let's discuss the covers. we got some really cool cover artists. Like a lot of people who I wasn't quite sure that they would say yes or not. This is Andre Lunatic. I don't know. Do you have any opinions on the cover, Phil?
I kind of love it. I love the gray, and the green. Man, like I said, the ghosts that Alberto created in the story. I like what this artist did with them here.
Yeah, it kind of has a Ghostbustery feel to it, right?
Yes. Ghostbusters meets. I'm getting like Evil Dead vibes a little bit too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's what it'll look like when it's all printed out. So I don't know if you want to discuss the cover for this, James, while I'm looking up how to pronounce the guy's name.
Yeah, I mean, this is our, I alluded to it before as a demon in the story. So here's our demoness, I guess, in all her glory. This was one of those things where, we kind of threw that out there in the script to say, like, hey, there's a demon, it's a lady demon. And I didn't really have a set design in mind. But I mean, Antonio did a great job with the design, and that was what was used here to illustrate the cover of the book.
So the name of the artist is Cascajo Jose Miguel Castro. And I think the cover turned out really great. I colored it. I hope the colors did justice to the actual design of the character. And I think, like you alluded to, this does kind of give away the ending of the story. But honestly, I mean, it's such a great visual. I couldn't resist, having her on the cover.
Yeah, and I know we talked about that too, even from the title of the book of the story. That it's like, what else can we do there? But it says, it's doesn't totally reveal everything, but I think that there's some fun little twists in there that's still definitely worth the journey.
Yeah.
Looks good.
Yeah, thanks.
Grant, I gotta say those colors are beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, I was going for, like green and red are complementary, and then the blue, kind of like the muted sky. I don't know. I think it worked. Thank you so much for saying that.
And I think, Grant, you had also inked. I know you had inked my story.
I inked a few of the stories,
and you lettered it too, didn't you?
I lettered every. So when I color or letter, I use pseudonyms, but yeah, pretty much everything.
Oh, sorry, didn't want to spoil that. There you go.
No, I don't care. You know what? I don't even know why I use pseudonyms. It's something that I started doing, and I think I had some type of logic for it, but I've forgotten the logic for doing that a long time ago.
Grant's the Richard Bachman of
Yeah.
of letters.
Yeah, so the Come and See cover was done by Gray Muir Lewis. I don't know. What went through your heads, guys, when you first saw it?
Love it. It's when you spend time, drawing a character, designing it, kind of connecting to it. It's a little odd to see somebody else draw your character, or at least for me. I haven't been doing this that long, right? So, having seen this, the first thing, I said was, I love the colors. The colors look great. It adds like this nice eeriness to it, but it's got like this raw emotion to it. I love it. I love it. It's very flattering, for sure.
I think I think Brian said that we should have at least one cover where the guy is like looking directly into the viewer. So this definitely fits that category.
Yeah, I love it. It looks really great.
Yeah, I like a good action shot, something that is gonna look good with no trade dress on it. Something that would look good as like a trading card. That's kind of something I've learned from my time in comics. Like you want a good, like, nice clean image that's going to look rad, whether it's on a comic book cover or a poster or trading card or whatever.
And so this is actually the fan art that I based my entire story around. I'm interested to see how this does in comparison to the other covers. Not that I don't like this cover, but I feel like this is probably the most weird and the most kind of out there. So I don't know if readers are going to respond well to that or if they're going to respond poorly to that. I don't know what you guys think.
It's different. It's got, oh my God, it's giving me, who did the Archie covers?
Francisco
the
Francavilla?
The Archie zombie covers.
Francavilla? Francisco Francavilla, yeah.
I think I haven't looked at that cover in a while, but that's the first thing that popped in my head.
Those pumpkins have Tim Sale Long Halloween vibes for me.
Yeah, for sure.
For sure.
Or I don't know if you guys remember the Green Goblin like ongoing series from the 90s.
Yeah.
That I believe it was drawn by Scott McDaniel.
Yeah.
It kind of has that kind of look to it as well.
When I saw it, it kind of gave me old Scooby-Doo vibes a little bit.
Yeah, the colors are definitely Scooby-Doo for sure.
And
so I don't know how well this is going to do commercially, but I mean, like I said, I think that this cover is definitely out there. I like this cover. And if, other people don't like it, that's fine. There are 4 other covers you can look at. And last but not least, so this was an homage to the Clerks 3 movie poster, which I have to hand it to Angie because she was the one who had that idea. And this one was drawn by, I'm sorry, I'm really bad with names, Chris Kazmar. This was a gentleman we met at which convention did we meet? The Akron Comic Con. And we were sitting next to him, and he was kind of bored at the convention, and he was just like, I need something to draw. And I said, well, how about if we commissioned you to do a cover for us? And I love this cover because there's lots of little details. I was a little bit worried that what it's homaging is a little bit too obscure. But I think this cover works even if you don't know what it's homaging. And like I said, there's a lot of little details. Like if you look at the cash register, it says 666. And if you look at the take a penny, leave a penny, there is an eyeball sticking out of the take a penny, leave a penny, which I think is a great little detail.
yeah, I was very happy with how this came out. Chris is quite the gentleman, and we gave him lots of time to work on it. I mean, I think we talked I guess it was last year, so
Yeah.
And it was worth the wait, I would say, for sure.
Yeah, I think it turned out really great. And I have to, like I said, I have to give hats off to Angie, because Angie was the one who went and networked with him. And she was also the one who had the idea to do an homage of the Clerks 3 movie poster.
Before I knew it was a homage, I right away was like, that looks really familiar. So I kind of love what you did there.
And then we also have a Chrome cover that is available. So we're only doing the Chrome cover for the She Demon cover, just because the more different covers that you do, the more it costs. And I don't know, maybe I'm tipping my hat with this a little bit. I have a feeling that this is going to be the most popular cover. And I hope nobody thinks that's disrespectful to the other cover artists. I think this is going to be the most popular cover. A, because it looks really nice, but B, also because it's a sexy lady, let's be honest.
I don't know.
That sells. So there we go. Hey, we got 17 days. So Get your
Right.
sexy lady demon cover.
Exactly. So, like I mentioned, also, this is actually volume 2 of Memoirs of the Morbid. We have a little section here. I'm just going to breeze by this. If
Yay.
yeah, there's Brian's story. Sorry, Brian. I hope you don't feel like we've been leaving you out of the conversation.
No. I'm enjoying the conversation. It's nice when I don't have to carry the show. Just keep
Right.
going, keep going.
Yeah, Brian also has a really great show that he does. Well, you have a pop-up show that you do kind of when you feel like it, right?
Right. It's called No Warning because that's what I give you.
Yeah, so if you guys, so like I said, you don't have to read volume 1 in order to understand volume 2, but if it looks cool, you can definitely get a copy of that through this Kickstarter as well. And here at the bottom, we have the fulfillment. And as you can see in big letters, well, first of all, this is going to be out to people in time for Halloween, which is great because most people do their horror Kickstarters at Halloween, which doesn't make sense because you're not going to get the comic book until like December or January, right? But this is actually going to be in your hands in time for Halloween. And as you can see in big letters here, this comic book is 100% done. So
that means it's perfect for trick or treaters, then, right? Is that right?
I mean, I
Yes.
guess it depends on what neighborhood you live in.
Only the really little ones.
Yep.
Okay, so that's pretty much the Kickstarter. Let's see if there's any more comments. I don't know. Is this Stevan? Is that how you pronounce his name?
Steven.
Steven. Okay.
Yeah,
Well, thank you very much, Steven. Oh, okay. I don't know why it looked like an A instead of an E. I apologize, Steven. And yeah, so Carl likes that cover, which is good. Good. So we're up to 462 with 24 backers, which is great. And as Donna said, we're getting close to $500, which, like I said, I think we can easily do 500. I don't know. After this, I'm probably going to log off of my computer, and I'm going to try to resist the urge to not keep checking the Kickstarter.
Good luck.
I don't know.
Yeah, good luck. I mean, that's the whole thing. You obsessively refresh the page every 30 seconds, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, pull the other one, Grant.
Yeah.
Exactly. I live with him. He's full of BS.
Right.
I mean, that's not to say I won't be doing the same thing. And now that I have a very vested interest in this.
Yeah, I mean, that was part of the reason why I wanted to get Angie involved. I mean, she comes to a lot of conventions with me, and she has to pitch my comic books, and I kind of wanted to give her the opportunity to pitch her own comic book.
Yeah. So
you're gonna get the bug now, though. You're gonna, once you hold that physical copy in your hand, it's gonna be all over. Now you're gonna be writing stories, putting out books.
Can I tell them what you said when you first started seeing the art come back?
Yeah.
She said, "I can't believe this used to be in my head, and now it's a real physical thing." And I said, "Now you understand why I've been obsessing about comic book creation."
Yeah, it never goes away. You always feel that way throughout the whole process.
Well, if it tells you anything, Grant and I are already working on my own comic book now. This idea that I came up with 2 months ago, and we're getting it together. There's no like full script or anything, but yeah, like it's definitely been like that. Like we went to a baseball game, and then I had an idea sparked by that. So like the notes app in my phone is just like ridiculous at this point. It's kind of like, yeah, it's like chasing a dragon, or I don't know, whatever that phrase is.
You got the inker, you got the letterer, you got the editor right next to you, and the colorist.
Yeah.
You got it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no.
So,
But that's how it goes. Everyone's got a list of story ideas and stuff, and in different formats. You know, whether you got a physical notebook, or, you know, notes app or something like that. So that's how it starts.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's the
Yeah,
best feeling in the world. It's the best feeling in the world. It really is. See, holding that story in your hand that you got published.
Yeah.
I ran to Matt on Free Comic Book Day, and I took my son with me. And the best thing I ever heard was my son saying, "Dad, which of these books are yours?" Because there's a few of them at the store. So I was like, "Oh, this one, but don't touch. Don't get your fingerprints on them."
So one of the things that was really exciting for me was I overheard my stepdaughter, Angie's daughter, like she was having a sleepover, and she was showing one of her friends like the box of like stock comic books that we have in the spare room, and she was like explaining the storyline, and I think I got a little bit like choked up that night.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, so we're going to a convention this weekend, and the kids are coming with us. And my daughter's like, "Well, I'll get the teenage boy audience." She's gonna work at the booth. So.
Yeah, I was happy about that too. So Angie's daughter is coming with us to a convention this weekend, and she's already she's so excited about it. She's already all packed up, which I was happy about.
That's great.
Yeah, so we try to keep these a little over an hour. Does anybody else have anything they want? Let me check and see where the where we are currently. Sorry, I'm really bad at this technical stuff. Is it me or is it my computer? Does my computer go? I'd like to complain about my computer, but it's probably me for going too slow, right?
You know, I want to shout out my older brother. He just messaged me that he backed the Kickstarter.
Nice.
Awesome. So we're at 25 backers now. We're at 476. I'm going to say that's close enough to 500. We can celebrate that, right? What do you guys think?
Yeah.
Yeah. Go for it.
Good. Yeah. So what are we doing? We're popping bottles. Like, how are we wrapping that up then?
Wine glass.
There's
Yeah, there's not much wine, but
Oh, there you go. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
does anybody else have anything else to add before we sign off?
Grant, thank you for trusting me to bring some of these creators in. It means a lot, and I hope it paid off.
I think it did. I think we turned out a pretty awesome comic book. So, yeah. So thanks for recommending these guys.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah,
Exciting.
good stuff.
All right, everybody. I'll see you next week. And everybody go back the Kickstarter right now.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Have a good
Thanks,
night.
y'all.
Good night, guys.
Bye.